A Pokemon may possess amazing traits aplenty, but as in life, the context of its surroundings, in this case the format being played, is what dictates which of those traits it needs, or if any of its traits are useful at all. This is most easily seen in the concept of tiers. For example, while Charizard isn't going to do anything of worth in Gen 4 UU or Gen 5 RU, seeing as it's totally outclassed by Moltres, Charizard becomes the best Pokemon around once it drops to the NU tier below, where there isn't a Moltres to be found. Today though, we're going to be exploring a more drastic shift in format, whether you have one Pokemon out on the field or two. The difference between singles and VGC is so massive that certain Pokemon which thrive in one format are just about worthless in the other and vice versa. This is why some players struggle to acclimatize to the other format. Even the strategies that look familiar on an immediate level, like say Scarflander's T, operate so differently just by virtue of the different format. So today we're going to explore the specificities of the strategies whose viability swings one way or another based on the format. And this is why the format is everything, otherwise known as the Incineroar theorem. But first, this video is sponsored by Bombergrounds Reborn. Bombergrounds is a mixture of two of the best video game genres of all time, Bomberman and Battle Royale. That's right, you can hop into the arena with other players and strive to be the last one standing to achieve victory. Also, those cute characters aren't just for show. Each one of those characters you unlock as you play has different abilities and runes which you can customize to build your strategy. I'm having a blast mix and matching different runes in order to utilize different playstyles every single game. I think the most fun and hilarious character for me is Hoppy because he can maneuver in and out of danger with his super jump. Now that's pivoting. The new season of Bombergrounds just launched, so don't miss out. You can play with random people or your friends and the fun never stops. And if you want one of the best mix of video game genres and also support the channel to help us produce more content, download Bombergrounds Reborn by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking on the link in my description. Also, leave your user ID under the pinned comment and Bombergrounds will select a few winners to receive free gems. The first factor to consider in these contrasting levels of viability is that VGC is much faster than singles, due to both the doubles format and the fact that, while there are still 6 Pokemon per team, only 4 are brought to the actual battle. Contrast this with Smogon doubles, which still has 2 Pokemon on the field at a time, yet is a full 6-on-6 and uses level 100 Pokemon, and regularly has game lengths that wouldn't be out of place in singles. That metagame shift to level 100 Pokemon also increases bulk slightly, which of course means in VGC, everything takes a bit more damage. Not a huge amount, only about 1%, but it can still be jarring to those who are used to a certain damage level. While singles metagames are no stranger to fast-paced environments, it would be highly unusual for the games to be as short as VGC, in which it is somewhat of a rarity for games to hit double-digit turns. With shorter games, every turn is huge, and strategies that force free turns are much more impactful in VGC. Strategies such as
What's up, slappers?
Perhaps the most notable is the format's emphasis on Fakeout. The move is perfectly fine in singles, featuring on certain dedicated leads like Ambipom, Infernape, and Hariyama, while also seen on Kangaskhan and Mega Medicham as an offensive tool. However, in VGC, the move is downright essential for enabling all manner of strategies by an ally Pokemon. Whether that's a field condition, a setup move, or just hitting hard, the move is incredibly popular and constantly played around. Its efficacy is such that it forms a large part of a Pokemon's viability. It's not an option so much as a necessity to enable its teammates. Fakeout is so good that even the threat of it can be amazing support. For instance, an opponent protecting to avoid getting faked out and that being read by the Fakeout user to their advantage. Obviously, the best Fakeout user in VGC history is Mega Kangaskhan, which wields the move both as support and a ferocious offensive tool. But Pokemon such as Hitmontop, Raichu, Smeargle, and of course, Incineroar regularly demonstrate the sheer scope of how much can be done with the move. These Fakeout users were not just good because of Fakeout, of course, but it was still an enormous factor. Note how none of these Pokemon are anywhere near top tier in singles, yet they're varying doubles friendly toolkits in addition to Fakeout, like Hitmontop and Incineroar's Intimidate, which is doubly effective against the 2 targets they face at a time in VGC, Raichu's electric absorbing lightning rod that makes it great support for King Kyogre of all things, Smeargle's Dark Void hitting both targets to such effectiveness it got the move nerfed, allowed them to find great success success in this format. Other moves like spread moves are also very important in doubles. Rock Slide, which is overshadowed by Stone Edge in singles, is more dangerous in doubles because it hits both targets with the potential to flinch. And this concept can be seen in how fire types like Heatran and Mega Charizard Y often opt for Heat Wave as their stab. Even though spread moves are weaker in doubles since they are, well, spread across two opponents, hitting both opponents simultaneously for less damage is better than hitting one opponent at a time harder, especially since it means you're still going to be dealing damage even if one of the opponents protects. There are also the moves that are specifically only to be used in doubles, moves that can be spectacularly effective. Follow Me and Rage Powder's ability to redirect moves away from their partners can be frighteningly effective, especially when used by a bulky Pokemon like Amoonguss, which will weather hits aimed at its allies while its ally does whatever it likes, such as boosting. Additionally, Helping Hand allows a Pokemon to give its ally a power boost, giving the likes of Hitmontop and Whimsicott even more utility. Next, as we've mentioned it many times already, we must now discuss Protect itself. Now, this is an outstanding move in singles as well, one of its most defining in many metagames, but even at its strongest, it does not approach the way the move is often slapped on seemingly everything without an Assault Vest in VGC. It is so omnipresent, so powerful, because when you are facing two Pokemon simultaneously, your potential to withstand hits is compromised, and sometimes you have to avoid that damage entirely. This goes for nearly any Pokemon, as the situations in which the move is needed are just about endless. It's a simple concept, but immeasurably important, and it shapes the VGC landscape far, far more than even when the move was at its most popular and hated in generations 3 through 5 of OU. Finally, speed control moves, Tailwind and Trick Room, are similarly defining and powerful in VGC. In singles, Trick Room teams can work theoretically, but it's gimmicky, risky, and thus rare in practice. Meanwhile, Tailwind as a team style borders on the non-existent, instead being reserved as a move something like Tornadus can use in emergency situations. Both strategies are deeply flawed in singles because the viability of bulkier teams and prominence of longer games with plenty of slower paced play do not lend themselves well to Trick Room and Tailwind's all or nothing style, especially given their short durations, without an item to extend them. In VGC, however, battles are often barely longer than these moves' durations, which makes them excellent choices, especially Trick Room, since you're only dealing with 4 Pokemon and can do more damage to a higher percentage of your opponent's team per turn. Such teams are ruthlessly efficient in flipping the battle speed conditions to their team's liking and winning the game. Even in a metagame with Protect around every corner, there's only so much stalling you can do before a Trick Room team overwhelms you. They are nearly automatic wins if they set up safely. You've got the bulky setters like Porygon 2, Cresselia, Dusclops, and then the slow big hitters which destroy everything under Trick Room like Snorlax or Rhyperior. However, moves aren't the only thing that enables such powerful Pokemon. Indeed, double-specific abilities are obvious choices. Now, some of these are those that are effective in singles. See the aforementioned Intimidate and Lightning Rod, as well as Storm Drain, the water equivalent of Lightning Rod. All of these are superb in singles, but they take on another dimension completely in their doubles form. Intimidate is so good that a Pokemon which doesn't find much success in singles, such as Arcanine, transforms into one of the most important pieces of the format in VGC. The same with Neutralizing Gas. In singles, it is prized for its unique, valuable facility in shutting down opponents attempting to heal with Regenerator. However, in VGC, it is another beast entirely, famously allowing its ally Regigigas to ignore the enormous hindrance that is its slow start ability. There are also abilities that are only useful in doubles, however. For instance, Clefairy, no, not Clefable, but Clefairy has a legitimate niche in VGC because of its incredible ability Friend Guard, which weakens damage to allies by 25%. Then there is the combination of Commander Tatsugiri, which pairs with Dondozo to give it an incredible +2 boost to all of its stats. Keep in mind, by the way, that Clefairy and Tatsugiri are not exactly singles behemoths either. This is purely off of their support capabilities, only possible in the doubles format. Additionally, prankster Pokemon are generally far more effective in VGC than they are in singles. Oh sure, Thundurus is an excellent Pokemon in singles, but as good as its prankster Thunderwaves are for checking just about everything, it is primarily a threat. The actual prankster abuse itself is quite limited. In VGC, however, the blitzing pace means enabling of strategy through support moves is incredibly important, and what better way to guarantee one pulls off their support moves than with priority on them? This can be seen in the massive utility brought by Whimsicott. Priority Tailwind and Encore are game changers. Meanwhile, Thundurus spams not just priority Thunderwave, but even Swagart to infuriating effect. Thundurus itself even becoming the Pokemon with the most World's Top 8s in VGC history thanks to its abuse of prankster in addition addition to everything else it has. Now the flip side. Abilities and moves that are not good in VGC, despite their excellence in singles. King Gambit wields Supreme Overlord with relish in Gen 9 OU, to the point of near brokenness, but the ability is nowhere nearly as effective, with only 3 teammates that can feint, and games being so incredibly quick. King Gambit, a prominent VGC Pokemon, chooses to run the Intimidate, Thwarting Defiant instead. The entry hazards that define every generation of OU are just about nowhere to be seen in VGC either, with games as short as they are, setting hazards is a waste. This ties into perhaps the defining dichotomy between singles and VGC. Incredible singles walls like Skarmory, Blissey, Clefable, and Toxapex are just about worthless in VGC. Their strength comes from walling opponents over the course of a longer game, whittling them down with hazards, but they're walling one opponent at a time, mind you. Taking on 2 simultaneously is an entirely different story. Furthermore, they wall opponents not in isolation, but as parts of a 6 Pokemon team, not 4, and the job can already be immensely difficult with 6. Their complete inability to do direct damage and reliance on passive damage is not at all in tune with VGC's success either, and they don't exactly pack the specificity of support more VGC-centric Pokemon might have. It's not necessarily just walls either. Greninja is one of the most frightening offensive threats in singles, but it excels at beating one opponent at a time, picking and choosing its spots with greater ease. However, in doubles, its incredible frailty is far more easily preyed upon, and it doesn't possess the power needed to compensate, so it doesn't get used. Also, Ash Greninja is not allowed. Now, it's amusing to consider Hitmontop better than Skarm, Bliss, Pexclef, and Greninja, but that's VGC for you. Funnily enough, there is also significant difference between singles and VGC in that mythical Pokemon, many of which are backbones of many singles metagames, have never been used in VGC at all because they're not allowed. And it's certainly not a matter of brokenness, it's just that not everyone can go to select Toys R Us's and get your free Darkrai or something. Perhaps it's for the best. The chaos of Mew's support move pool might be too much for VGC. Additionally, Leftovers, the backbone of singles, is nearly non-existent in VGC. Why? Because the games are simply too short for the recovery to make much of a difference. Instead, items like Citrus Berry are used because their greater immediate recovery is worth the trade-off, only being used once since the games are so short. Now, before you think the 2 formats are completely alien to each other, of course, there are Pokemon that have excelled in both. There are unique elements of certain aspects of their play between the formats, of course, but by and large, they are functionally similar. Prominent examples include Landorus T, Thundurus I, Heatran, Rotom Wash, and sure, in singles, they'd be more focused on abusing or avoiding hazards, but they largely do what they do in both formats. Many of the restricted Pokemon are like this as well. Incidentally, this applies to many items as well, like Choice Scarf and Rocky Helmet. Consider something like Mega Charizard Y. Sure, it might use Roost in singles and Protect in VGC, or Fire Blast in singles and Heat Wave in VGC, but it is by and large going to do the same thing, bludgeon opponents with Sun Boosted Fire Stab. Even something like Amoonguss, which is quite doubles focused with its use of Rage Powder, is still similar in its great resists, extra health with Regenerator, and the ability to shut something down with Spore. And then there are Megas, Z-Move users, Dynamax abusers, Terastallization abusers, which are similar in many ways. Now, the way these Pokemon interact with their surroundings is of course different by virtue of the 2 Pokemon at a time format, but at their core, they are similar. Finally, we come to the Pokemon of the hour. Incineroar itself. In singles, Incineroar is decent, all things considered. It has its good traits, like a strong dual stab combination, great move pool, and good stats alongside Intimidate. However, it's also Stealth Rock weak, it's unable to heal reliably, and it isn't that strong or bulky, and definitely not very fast no matter which meta you place it in. This is why Incineroar is great in the lower tiers, but standard play is far beyond its reach. In VGC though, Incineroar was practically designed for it. Everything about it is absolutely perfect for the format. It's not just that several of its singles flaws aren't around to harangue it. No Stealth Rock and lack of reliable recovery isn't nearly as important in such short games, but it's more than that. It has Intimidate, which in and of itself is absolutely incredible in hitting both opponents and slowing the slew of sluggers otherwise slaughtering the tier. It has the turn generating Fakeout, and we know by now how crucial every turn is in VGC especially. It pivots in and out of battle easily with U-turn in Gen 7 or afterwards Parting Shot, the latter imparting even more utility with the attack and special attack drops it leaves on the opponent. And for a utility Pokemon, it hits quite hard with Flare Blitz and its vicious dark stabs, from the item removing knockoff to the sound move blocking Throat Chop. Even the stab brings utility, and it's got Taunt on top of all of this. Incineroar is the best utility Pokemon in VGC, checking seemingly everything somehow with its stat lowering and turn generating capabilities, and enabling its teammates while doing so. It is perfect in this role, and for generations now, its usage has been absolutely through the roof as a result. It is absolutely everywhere. It wouldn't be inaccurate to compare it to Snorlax in Gen 2 OU, as it is so common and must always be considered when team building. If you're a numbers person, chew on some stats. In the final series of Generation 8, Incineroar had 73% usage, mirroring the usage of the over 70% it had across all restricted formats in Gen 7, and also being used over Zacian Crown. It cannot be overemphasized enough just how present and powerful Incineroar is in VGC. Its usage is so high, its efficacy so impossible to stop, it is regularly complained about by the player base, some even considering its presence toxic. And even in the Power Crept Scarlet and Violet VGC metagames, where it's not as threatening as it was before, it continues to excel. It is simply the perfect Pokemon for the format, and its traits that are so perfectly suited for this metagame do not translate nearly as well to singles. It's not generating turns for huge hitters nearly as well there because it's not on the field at the same time as them. And in singles, if we're gonna compare other starter Pokemon, in fact other fire starter Pokemon, the best starter Pokemon by far in singles is Blaziken, who is a 3-time Uber, who incidentally isn't much of a VGC Pokemon either. In singles though, even in the more recent generations where it's no longer Uber, Blaziken is an utter terror. Its ferocious offensive onslaught on both sides of the attacking spectrum, from its strong stats to its fierce dual stab, is usually played around by outspeeding it. Even faster offensive threats can generally be outrun reasonably. However, with speed boosts, such counterplay disappears almost immediately for Blaziken. Forget your choice scarfers, let alone anything else, and watch in horror as it effortlessly wipes your team out. Knowing how it's going to hit you is bad enough, but its unpredictability makes it even worse. Is it Swords Dance? Mixed? What coverage does it have specifically? Will it have Protect to grab a speed boost and let it beat even faster threats one-on-one? This is why Blaziken overwhelming the game was a distinctly singles proposition. It was exactly the one-on-one format that allowed it to shine, as this allowed Blaziken to pick its spots with precision and safety. When it's 2-on-2 though, Blaziken is Greninja-esque in how its immense frailty lets it down when it can't target opponents as well. This makes it the inverse of Incineroar, who is less of a threat one-on-one, but becomes the perfect support when it's on the field alongside a teammate. Incineroar can do no wrong, in the right format anyway. So that's it. Of course, there are so many differences between singles and VGC that we're going to leave some out, because otherwise this video could have easily been an hour or even more. Let us know in the comments if there's anything in either format that you think that we should have mentioned. In conclusion though, it's all about the pace. Slower pace strategies like leftovers, entry hazards, and bulky walls aren't going to cut it in VGC, whereas the all-in immediacy of tactics like Fakeout and Tailwind don't have nearly as much of an impact on the slower singles formats, even in the ones that are on the faster side. There's a lot of nuance to this, of course, but for now, however, we leave you to ponder just how perfect Incineroar is in VGC. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone. Also, don't forget to download Bombergrounds Reborn by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in my description below.